Hello everyone and welcome back to another Rise of Kingdoms video. I am RoyalMixGaming, and in today's video we're going to go over what are my top 5 commanders for Ark of Osiris League. So for Ark of Osiris League, I'm going to kind of talk about what are some of my top 5, what are my top 5 commanders that I would use. Basically you can mix and match these commanders into multiple different marches with multiple other commanders that are really good. They're either going to have a very powerful debuff, powerful buff, a lot of AoE, and AoE is basically the biggest deal in Ark of Osiris League. Do you have a lot of AoE? Are you hitting a lot of targets to hit a lot of people, do a lot of damage really quickly? So my first commander that we're going to go ahead and go over, probably my number 1, I think that's a really good march. It's got a good balance of basically everything that you kind of want. And for Ark of Osiris League, other than probably March Speed, is Scipio. I would probably put him number 1, simply because he can go with Honda, he can go with Guanyu, he can go with Alex, he can go with Harold, he can go with a lot of different marches in Ark of Osiris League. He has a powerful debuff, has AoE, and does high skill damage. He's probably my number 1 pick for Ark of Osiris League. His only downside is he has a little bit shorter or slower march speed, which is kind of a problem. But if you want the powerful debuff and the AoE, you're going to be there in plenty of time, and he's going to provide a very powerful force on the open field. The second commander we're going to go ahead and go over that I think is probably my number 2 option for Ark of Osiris League is obviously Nevsky. Downside, no AoE. Good part of Nevsky, as everybody knows, really high skill damage, powerful debuff. You don't have to bring Ethelfled, things like that. And he goes with any Cav commander and does absolutely phenomenal. XY, Nevsky, Saladin and Nevsky's decent. Nevsky and Williams, probably one of the higher top tier, probably number 1. Then it's XY Nevsky, simply for the buffs that William brings and things like that. But he can go with basically any Cav commander and do extremely really well. He's my number 2 commander to bring for Ark of Osiris League. My number 3 pick on this pair is going to be Nebuchadnezzar. Big AoE, hits a lot of targets, gives you a lot of damage to a lot of targets, and does really well. Downside, he's not very tanky, but the AoE makes up for it in my opinion. So he's going to have a 5 target AoE, he gets 1500, does really well, goes with any archer commander and does really well with that pair. Obviously there are better ones. I think that Henry is a pretty good pair with Nebu, no AoE, but it's pretty decent. Other pairs you can do is Gilgamesh, other pairs, maybe Cyrus, and things like that generate more rage or provide a debuff. This is a really good commander for Ark of Osiris League because he just does a lot of AoE, and that's what you want, especially for middle fights. But you can also bring him with Tamarus, which is really good too, which leads me into my 4th commander for this list is going to be Tamarus. I think that Tamarus is highly underrated for Ark in general because you can bring her with many different archer commanders and provide a very powerful debuff to a target to take it down very quickly. If you can provide enough skill damage with your rally, proper swarm, have the proper commanders and marches in the open field, you can take a structure down with, especially with Tamarus, really quickly. So you only have to have Tamarus at 5'5", well 5'115" is all you really have to have her at, which is why I think she's a very top tier commander for Ark of Osiris League. Debuffing structures, debuffing different people on the open field is going to help your team, help you take structures very quickly, and is really good for Tamarus, which is why you can pair her with Nebu, Gilgamesh, Ramses, many other commanders. The recommended is Nebuchadnezzar, which is the 3rd one on this list, simply because they go really well together. They provide a powerful debuff. Nebu brings your AoE and your march speed, which helps you out a lot. My 5th commander on this list is going to be Boudicca. I think that Boudicca is really good for the rallying portion of Ark of Osiris League and provides a good, powerful debuff. It's tanky with maybe Henry, or you can also do it with Nebuchadnezzar. You could also do Henry and Nebu depending on what you're doing, but also you can always run Cav and do XY Nev to bring the most skill damage at the quickest rate possible. Depends on your strategy, but I think Boudicca brings a good balance in between tanky and high skill damage, and possibly could do AoE if you pair with certain commanders. I still would recommend Henry as a 2nd, but some people run Gilgamesh and Henry and things like that. But I think that her and Henry is a really solid rally pair, and it's my number 5 on this list because she brings the skill damage you want, tankiness,
and is going to provide a very powerful debuff. That is why she is on my 5th commander on this list. Some notable mentions for these commanders for Ark of Osiris League. Obviously, XY has AoE, high skill damage, very quick rate, not very tanky, and you can get away with not using him if you use Nevsky and William. You don't have to have XY, but the AoE is very, very nice. That's why he's a notable mention on this list. Next notable mention is Guanyu. You don't really have to have Guanyu necessarily if you have a max Scipio and like a max Honda, because it's going to provide you a debuff. AoE is out really, really fast. Guanyu's silence is definitely underrated, which is why this is more of a notable mention. You do need this for Ark of Osiris League, but my top 5 are going to be things that provide even more than just silence. They're going to provide AoE that's even higher skill damage, provide you debuffs, things like that. So Guanyu is another notable mention on this list. My next notable mention on this list is going to be YSG, simply because he's a little bit more outdated, not very tanky. Nebu YSG is obviously really a lot of AoE. There's no debuff there, it's just kind of a problem, so you're kind of wanting to bring some of these other commanders and mix and match to provide you AoE and a debuff, which is really, really powerful. My next one on this list is Trajan. Not everybody's going to have this, is why I'm notably mentioning it, because Trajan is really, really good for middle fights, obviously providing buffs to your team and debuffs to the certain targets, which is really, really nice. Notable mention because he doesn't have any AoE, not very tanky, and he's not doing any damage, so he's just a buffer. Don't have to have, you only need a few to provide buffs for your team. The last one on this list, I've obviously already talked about William. William goes with Nevsky, so you already should have a decent William, 5'5", 5'1", something like that. The last one on this list is going to be Honda, simply because not everybody's going to have Honda maxed out at a decent level, 5'5", 5'1", anything like that. But the AoE that Honda brings for the middle fight, the AoE he brings in any big open field fight, is very underrated, and I think he is a notable mention for top tier commanders for Ark of Osiris League. Obviously, if you have him, he goes with basically any of the ones I've listed today. Other than I would recommend probably not doing Tamarus. It's kind of a weird pair, and I wouldn't really do that. But everybody else, he would go really, really well with and do a lot of AoE and skill damage and bring you more troops, which makes you last a little bit longer, which is really, really good. That is what my list is for the top 5 commanders for my Ark of Osiris League, and they're notable mentions because not everybody's going to have them, or they just aren't, I would say, as good as those 5. So I want to thank you guys for watching this video. Drop a like, subscribe if you haven't already, and I'll see you on the next one.